Welcome back. My name is Random Precision and this is episode 4 of my Brood War tutorial series. In this episode, I am assuming you already know how to create control groups, add units to them, and also how to use the F keys to save locations. The first thing I'm going to talk about is input detection. In Brood War, there are two instances where your inputs will be ignored by the game. The first one happens when you are clicking with the mouse. So any input that you give when you are holding a mouse button down is going to be ignored. This can happen in real matches when you are macroing out of many buildings, and also when you are controlling units too fast. For example, if I try to make Marines out of all these barracks and my movements are not synchronized correctly, I may press the keyboard shortcut for Marine when I'm clicking, and thus the game will ignore the input. There is, however, a plugin in the MCA64 launcher and also in Chaos launcher that corrects the keyboard inputs, but it's not consistent and it fails, especially when you are going too fast. So my advice would be that at least for practice purposes you deactivate the plugin so you don't have bad habits being created. And if you want to use the plugin in real matches, that's up to you. Another instance where this happens is when you are scrolling the screen with the mouse. As you can see, my mouse cursor is a small green arrow, and when I use it to scroll the screen, it will change into a big double green arrow. Like so. In that instance, the mouse cannot receive any other mouse inputs. However, keyboard inputs are still fine. This can happen in a real match when you are trying to build something outside the screen, or if you are giving units orders outside the screen, for example, a movie. Observe that the very edges of the map do not change the cursor, and so you can still give units orders normally.
Right away, sir.
Like so. One thing that new players may not realize is that in Brood War you can press the mouse scroll down and move the screen. This is, however, extremely sensitive and there is no way to adjust the speed. The next thing I'm gonna talk about is mouse positioning when building something. In Brood War, as you may have already noticed, the constructions do not appear centered with the mouse cursor. Instead, they appear slightly to the right and slightly to the bottom, which means that you should position your mouse slightly to the left and slightly to the top of where you want to build. For example, if I was building a barracks here, I would position my mouse in this general area, like so. The exact position is not 100% consistent because the game changes it to a variable I wasn't able to recognize. But it is always to the left and always towards the top of the building. Although this may seem like a minor thing, the added time saved throughout the course of the game can be a lot, especially considering the repetitive buildings that you are going to make, like supply depots, pylons, cannons, turrets, or creep colonies. The next thing I'm gonna talk about is how to use the ctrl-C command. In Brood War, there are 3 different behaviors for when you use the ctrl-C shortcut. The first one is to center your screen on the unit or building you are selecting, like so. The second one is to center your screen on the first unit in your heads-up display, like so. And the third one is to center your screen on the most important unit you are selecting, like so. To understand how this works, basically, if you only have one unit or building selected, the screen will be centered on them. If you have more than one unit of the same type, the screen will center on the first unit of your selection. And if you have a mixed group of units, the game has a built-in priority system that decides which unit is the most important one, and so the screen will be centered on them. The priority list can be found in the description below. However, there is a way to know which unit will be centered without having to memorize. And that way is to listen to the voice that is played when you select the units. For example, I grouped this in a control group 1, and now I'm going to select, and you can hear that the tank is the one that's going to talk to me, like so, which means he is the most important unit in the group. Even if I add a marine to the group, it is not the marine sound that is going to be played, and instead the tank is going to talk to me again, like so, because he is still the priority in this group. In case I have more than one of the same high priority unit, the game will center on the first one that comes up in your heads-up display. The first real game application of this technique is to center your screen in order to save locations. For example, if I was taking this expansion, I would want my screen centered perfectly on the command center in order to tell my workers to mine with the same movement every time. To achieve this, I select the command center, press Ctrl+C, and then I can save the location in the dead center. The next application of this technique is to center the screen on air units when you are using the air unit stacking trick. As you can see, I have an Overlord and a Mutalisk selected, and they are both in control group 1. However, because the Overlord is in one location and the Mutalisk is in another, if I press the control group 1 key twice, my screen will center in the middle point between the units, like so. And even if I have 11 Mutalisks selected and press the control group 1 twice, the screen will still not center on the Mutalisks, like so. It is closer, however, because I have 11 Mutas in the same location and only one Overlord on the other, but being here doesn't help me, so the solution to this is to press the Ctrl+C key, which will center me on the highest priority unit on the control group, like so. Pay attention, however, that if you are using a Lurker to do the trick, because the Lurker is the same priority as the Mutalisk, you have to make sure that the Lurker is not the first unit in your selection, otherwise the screen will center on him. Another application of this technique is to send reinforcements to my army. For example, if I had these units in control group 1 and in position, and I went to my rally point and saw that I have 3 more tanks ready, the common procedure would be to send these tanks to attack and at the same time add them to my control group. The problem is that if I do this and then press my control group key twice, the screen will not center on my front line because I will have units in 2 different locations. The solution to this, again, is to use the Ctrl+C key to center on my front line, like so. Be careful, however, that you do not have only low priority units on your main control group. For example, if I only had Vultures on my main control group and I selected tanks for a reinforcement, because the tanks are higher priority than Vultures, my screen will center on the tanks. Another use of this technique is to control important units in mixed selections. For example, here I have 6 Goliaths and 1 Science Vessel selected, and I can jump straight to the Science Vessel if I press ctrl+C, like so. A common example for Protoss would be to have an Arbiter and other units selected, and for Zerg players to have a Defiler with other units selected. Make sure you pay attention to which unit talks to you when you select them, or memorize the priority lists, or even look at the unit that is shown in the portrait. The last application of this technique is to generally control your army better. In some situations, the ctrl+C key may be a better option than pressing the ctrl-group twice. For example, if you are moving units around, and especially if they are a mixed group, some units may spread far from each other, or in situations where you are going through a choke, like going up or down a ramp. This is, however, up to personal preference and experimentation. This is going to be it for this video. Thank you for watching. Hope you learned something. Like and subscribe so I can feel good about myself. And I'll see you in the next one.